We are steadily approaching the Easter holidays and the Carnival season. Many of us will be out enjoying ourselves, be it on the beaches, be it jamming in Carnival, and hopefully having a lot of fun. I would like, however, to remind all of us that we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we enjoy ourselves in a safe and responsible way. It would mean if we have to drink, do not overdo it, do not drink too much, do not, definitely not, drink and drive, okay? And a special appeal to the parents, please know where your children are. Make sure that should they go out to enjoy any one of these activities, that they are, especially if they are minors, that they are accompanied by adults who would be looking after their well-being. The police force is taking all of the necessary precautions, and in order to make sure that we are all safe, I would like to ask the public that should you be approached by the police and given any kind of instructions as far as the public order is concerned, to please respect these instructions, adhere to the police, and let us all treat each other in a decent and respectable manner. And I think we would all be able to look back and say that we had a splendid time during our Carnival. As far as other information is concerned, I have nothing really specific to mention, except that the situation at the prison is going pretty good. I'm almost afraid to say that, but things are calm. Things are beginning to normalize themselves, where we are. We have beefed up the security measures, as I mentioned before, and we have to realize that many of these things are not visible to the outside public. But hopefully in the next press briefing, I'll be able to be more specific with some of the further actions that were taken at the prison.
It's Carnival time again, and here are a few tips you need to remember.
Avoid carrying a large amount of cash. Don't flash cash around. Carry it in a safe place. When using the ATM machine, pay close attention to suspicious persons hanging around. If that's the case, pass up that machine and find another. Carry all wallets in the front pockets and carry purses close to your body.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Police Force of St. Martin and the Department of Communication.
Over the past week, I've spent catching up with various departments under the ministry and the personnel of those departments. I've had several meetings with SG Miguel de Weaver, lining up our priorities and action points for the rest of the year. And of course, we will brief the public via the media when we are so far. On Monday, after a nice lunch and casual setting, my cabinet and I received a full briefing from all department heads, which was organized by the SG. There are ideas and positive initiatives and workable solutions on the table to address. In a nutshell, I must say there is a lot of work to be done, with the economy front and center. My message to the department heads was that my door is always open, and I will listen to their recommendations and with an open mind and realistic approach. Today, we'll be visiting all the departments to get a broad overview of their operations. Thereafter, we will meet with the department heads individually to discuss their year plan and governing program. I look forward to a fruitful, productive meetings with the department heads that could lead to tangible solutions for the issues we face. Thank you.
It's Carnival time again, and here are a few tips you need to remember.
Avoid carrying a large amount of cash. Don't flash cash around. Carry it in a safe place. When using the ATM machine, pay close attention to suspicious persons hanging around. If that's the case, pass up that machine and find another. Carry all wallets in the front pockets and carry purses close to your body.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Police Force of St. Martin and the Department of Communication.
I can recall just before going to Aruba when this whole issue of the Integrity Chamber and the appointment of Mr. Laytons was making headlines. I said at the time that I would not make any further public comment on it, but that I would be meeting with Minister Plasterk in Aruba, and after that I would report back. After I returned from Aruba, I reported right here to the media and through you to the people of St. Martin. I said we had agreed to simply mention that we had a meeting and that we will continue with the discussion because we have not come to any conclusions. And therefore, we have agreed also not to report on the content/outcome of the discussions. I stuck to my agreement, and lo and behold, the minister did not stick to his agreement, because rather than continuing with the meeting, we got a letter that the Dutch government had decided, or the Kingdom government, the minister had decided to send to the Kingdom Council of Ministers a proposal to give St. Martin an instruction based on the agreement that goes back to 2015. To that, you know what our response had been. Recently, prior to the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting on April 7th, Friday gone in The Hague, prior to the meeting, my Secretary General had he sent him an email, sent the Secretary General of the Ministry of Kingdom Relations, sent him an email telling him that the Prime Minister of St. Martin is willing to come to Holland to continue the discussion. All he would want is an agenda as to exactly what points we are going to discuss, since we could not reach agreement on St. Martin. So how would he want to structure the discussion for us to arrive at an agreement? The response, to date, zero. They never responded. What happened was we got information that the instruction was sent to the Kingdom Council of Ministers and would be handled on Friday. I traveled to the Netherlands last week, Wednesday, as you would know, and I requested to meet with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Minister Mark Rutte. I requested meetings, among others, with Minister Plasterk. The meeting with Minister Plasterk was almost carbon copy of the discussions in Aruba, because they are hell-bent to give St. Martin an instruction, whether you like it or not, or what they would exchange it for if St. Martin would do just like the Council of Ministers did in 2015, to succumb to their pressures and institute an integrity chamber controlled by the Dutch, and that would make them feel okay. When I met with Minister Rutte, of course, some of the media carried it here because of the press briefing we held in The Hague. But for those people from St. Martin who did not follow it while I was in The Hague, the meeting with Prime Minister Mark Rutte was very short, I think about 9 minutes, was very hostile. He was very angry. And to quote his words, he said at the time, he is sick and tired of the whining of St. Martin. St. Martin must agree to the Integrity Chamber, and whether we like it or not, the Integrity Chamber will come, because They're tired of it. And if we don't agree, get out of the kingdom. To that I responded, I have absolutely no problem with that. And that was the end of the meeting. To fast track now to where we are today. And I'll get back to where we were before I left Holland. Or rather, let me say what I said in the meeting in Holland. When I attended the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting, I made it known that the Dutch are using the protocol of 2015, signed by whom? Between the Dutch government and the St. Martin government. The content, because we need to sometimes revisit things and look at the big picture of it. It's an agreement between two governments within this kingdom. It's an agreement between the Dutch minister and the St. Martin ministers. In that agreement, they're forcing the Parliament of St. Martin to accept the draft of the Integrity Chamber as agreed upon between the governments, and no changes could be made. Contrary to what was reported in the editorial of the Herald newspaper, the Parliament did not ratify that draft Integrity Chamber law in its totality. They did, and unanimously. It was not a unanimous vote. The National Alliance faction voted against. We opposed it from the very beginning, because from the minute it was signed on that Saturday morning, I was in The Hague. I spoke out against it. I said, it is wrong. You're infringing on the authority of the Parliament. One must realize that when the four parliaments of the kingdom came together several years ago and agreed on a draft for the dispute regulation, because one is called for by the Kingdom Charter that we must have a dispute regulation, because if you have four countries living in the same house, if there's a dispute between one or more of those countries, or two or more of those countries, how will that dispute be settled? In our society, we have rules that govern. If we have a difference of opinion, if we have a fight over something, if you are renting from me, or you hit my car, or you owe me, we can go to court. And when the judge rules, we have to abide by that ruling. If we don't agree, we can go and appeal. If we don't agree, we can go further. But at the end of the day, when there is a final ruling, that's it. Whether you agree with it, that is the ruling. And we'll come to that, because now the Dutch wants to use that to say, oh, William Allen is a bad guy. So my thing was, so the four parliaments in the kingdom came with a dispute regulation. What did Holland do? When the dispute regulation reached on the table in Holland, Holland said, no. Parliaments, even though our parliament also agree with it, you can't tell us how to structure a dispute regulation, not for Holland, for the entire kingdom. What did they do? They put aside the agreement made by four parliaments of the kingdom, and Minister Plaster came with his own. And what does it basically say? We will, when we have a dispute, put it before the Council of State, but in the end, Holland reserves the right to disagree with the Council of State. So you go to the judge, we're going to make them the judge. But if the judge say, Holland, you are wrong, Holland reserves the right to say, no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. This is my kingdom. How could I be wrong in my kingdom? And this is the root of where we are today. We have lived up, and when I say we, St. Martin has lived up to the letter of the agreement in the protocol. St. Martin had to appoint a quartermaster. They didn't. The quartermaster had to draft a report. He didn't. From that report, they had to draft the Integrity Chamber ordinance. They didn't. It went to the Council of Ministers, approved. It went to the Parliament. A majority, not unanimous, it was approved. So with that, you can say St. Martin had lived up to the protocol. What happened is that legislation in St. Martin is subject to review on request of the Ombudsman by our Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court took a long time, and it is towards the second half, after the second half of 2016, like a year later, the Constitutional Court struck it down. That makes Holland angry. So now you're coming, and we fast forward to where we were. So in that meeting in The Hague on Friday, I told them, I said, well, it is clear Minister Plasterk and I cannot see eye to eye on the interpretation that they are giving to the protocol. They feel that St. Martin did not live up to the protocol. They're accusing St. Martin as not agreeing to the terms of the protocol because St. Martin agreed to a constitutional, to an integrity chamber, and to date St. Martin has done nothing. That is the gist of their approach. And my advice to the Kingdom Council of Ministers was, looking at the provisions made in Chapter 7 on the kingdom law that governs the Commission of Financial Supervision, the CFT, given the provisions of Chapter 7 that are also applicable to the protocol, we can file an objection, an appeal to the Council of State. The difference is that the Council of State, in ruling in such a dispute, in essence, their ruling would be binding like the Constitutional Court, because you cannot go on forever and ever, and not one of them cannot overrule the other. What you have now, and we've seen it happen several times already, if the Council of State would give a negative advice to the Kingdom Council of Ministers, they say, okay, thanks for the advice, but the decision is mine, I don't agree. So when Minister Plasterk told me on Friday, in an explosive manner, he will not tolerate it any longer, it is coming. It didn't even go yet. It did not even go yet for a vote, because the vote was on Friday. On Thursday, he knows, he can guarantee me that the instruction will come. So fine, you have your Council of Ministers locked down, they're on one line with you. But prior to it becoming fact, it has to go to the Kingdom, to the Raad van State, to the Council of State. If they say no, then what? You are saying up front, it will come. And if you don't agree with it, leave the kingdom. Now, there's a debate in the Parliament, in the second chamber, because we know Mr. Bosman and Van Raak, everything that happens down in St. Martin, they run and question, and it becomes a big issue. Yesterday, I am being told that the Dutch representative in Philipsburg has a message from Mr. Plasterk for me. So I said, well, let him deliver it and give it to the secretaries or somebody, because I'm busy. We had meetings, yesterday was Tuesday, we have Council of Ministers meeting. After that, we had another meeting in reference to the budget, preparing for the year plans. So I was busy. No, it has to be personally delivered. So I said, okay, let him come for 4:30. When he came 4:30, he came empty-handed. So I was in a meeting, but I said, you have a message? He said, no, it's actually a verbal message he came with. So I said, what's the verbal message? Well, Minister Plasterk said that he is disappointed in your statement about send the troops. I said, well, I made a statement before I went to the Netherlands and before I met with him. If he was disappointed, he should have told me so while I was in the Netherlands. It never became a point of discussion. He said, well, he had a debate with the second chamber, and the second chamber condemned my statement. I said, power be to them. Power be to them. because it does not faze me. It does not faze me. But what I told him officially, tell them I did not accept the message because this issue is too sensitive and important to deliver a verbal message. Because when you deliver a verbal message, there is no record of the message. Tomorrow, if we have another dispute, what are we going to say? Then I am going to be in an argument or a discussion or a dispute with a representative of the Dutch government in St. Martin. Am I then going to say, no, you lied, no, that's not how it went? As the Dutch teach us, papier heeft geduld. When you put it on paper, you can't get away from it. And the protocol of 2015 is on paper, and it is subject to scrutiny and review by the interpretation, or if there's a dispute about it. There is a dispute, and I told them that is the way forward. That is the way St. Martin will move forward. So even before the Council of State looks at the draft instruction itself, that they are basing on the agreement made not between the Kingdom government and St. Martin. It is not an agreement made between the Kingdom government and St. Martin. It's an agreement made between two governments in the Kingdom. So if we make an agreement between Curaçao and St. Martin, Curaçao will help us clean up our problems in ICT, or they're going to help us clean up our dump, or they're going to help us clean up the problems at the prison. And then Curaçao does not live up to the agreement. So the Kingdom government is going to impose a measure of supervision on Curaçao because they're in breach of an agreement between, there's an agreement between St. Martin, the government of St. Martin, not the Parliament of St. Martin, the government of St. Martin, and the government of Holland. The Constitutional Court, not me, because I said so, but the Constitutional Court, that all of us, we said we pledge allegiance to our Constitution, and how the Dutch are telling us, we don't care what your Constitutional Court said. Because basically that is what they're saying. We don't care because you have an agreement with us, and by the hook or the crook, you are going to carry out that agreement. So that is where we are. Now, should I panic because the Dutch members of the committee said, we condemn what the Prime Minister said because we live in a state of law? Yes, and the law is the Constitution, and the Constitutional Court that is there to make sure that each and every one of us, whether you're the Prime Minister or the Parliament, whether you're the Council of Ministers, if you do something in violation of the Constitution, we will tell you. And we have agreed to respect the decision of our Constitutional Court. So to tell me today that because I am saying, and I would say it again, the intention of the Dutch government to impose a measure of supervision on St. Martin, to force St. Martin to put an integrity chamber in place, is wrong. It is unconstitutional. Now, a professor, I realized in the front page of one of the newspapers yesterday, in an article that appeared in the Dutch press, a professor of law, not a friend of mine, not somebody who grew up in the region, or somebody who grew up in Dutch Quarter or Colbert Simpson May, not somebody who works here, not somebody in the government payroll. Somebody, a law professor, looked at the developments and he said, hey, boo, guys, Holland, are you wrong? It is wrong. Why don't the Parliament, the Dutch Parliament, call him in, he's a Dutch law professor, and say what it is you seeing that we don't see? Because what am I saying when I say bring in the troops? If you are going to might over right, whether we are wrong or not, that integrity chamber is going to come, and then for them, that's law. So I have to abide by it and bow and say, yes, master, integrity chamber come. And I said, no, then you have to bring the troops. I didn't say we're going to war, because if you want the integrity chamber to work, you won't get my cooperation. You won't get my cooperation. And with me, I'm not only saying the cooperation of William Allen, the cooperation of all of us. You won't get it.